Curse of Strahd, session 22. We started it off with a chase scene. That's right. I will be probably doing a full video on just chase scenes in general, but it is something, a cinematic moment in general. I've ran a couple of chase scenes with, trying to make it be a skill challenge and all this other stuff, but in Alcander's Almanac of all things, the expansion of 5th edition I released, there's this exact three chase point chase system as far as how to run off a chase and actually have mechanics to how a chase works, but tie the mechanics into D&D. Basically how it works is there's 3 chase points, and there's the quarry and the pursuers, or whatever, who's being chased and the chaser, right? And the players this time were being chased by the werewolves. There was 6 werewolves and 9 like wolves, right? And they were chasing after them, and there was 6 spaces on the grid. You had to be a certain space away from them, and they had to run away. It was a whole thing. It was great. And the chase, again, worked out exactly how I would have wanted it to, and it felt good. It felt right, and it was right on point. The wolves were slowly catching up to them round after round after round, and how the mechanics of it worked, it all worked out great. So anyway, in this series here now on the main channel, what I do is I give my Dungeon Master breakdown of what I thought was going to happen in sessions. Sprinkled throughout this whole thing, I don't pre-plan this out beforehand. There's different notes and tips and tricks of dungeon mastering that come up to me. I don't know what the video is going to be about, as far as I don't know what the session's going to have as far as different little tips and nuggets that I'm going to drop on you guys, but it's all behind the scenes stuff of my Dungeons and Dragons Curse of Strahd game that I'm running right now. In that, if you want to see the live gameplay footage, then you can, all patrons gain access to the live footage of that, where I show the gameplay. This week I messed up and didn't do it right, but next week after that, I'm going to be in a new location, because we are going to be filming in a new spot, and everything's going to be better. I'm going to have multiple cameras and trying to get multiple mics and other things like that. We'll keep expanding this thing. So if you're interested in that, check out on Patreon. And if you want to check out this Dungeon Master guide right here, I have this Dungeon Master binder available for the entirety of Curse of Strahd, every single section of Curse of Strahd from the beginning to the end, and it's all constantly being updated and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to go to the next session, which is my session prep notes. There's the chase scene. You have 3 chase points. You can use an action, a bonus action, a move, or a reaction. All of those cost 1 chase point, if depending on how you want to use them, and you can only dash a certain number of times equal to your Constitution modifier plus 2, or else you start rolling for exhaustion and stuff. You can escape, you can get caught, all that stuff. I laid it all out there. And the werewolves had different abilities and all that kind of stuff that they could do. Here's kind of the little stat block that I have for the werewolves. That's also in general another thing I do in these videos. I just share just random charts, random stuff that you could easily screen grab, clip, and steal for yourself as well, right? So I just have the very, very simple health, armor class, movement, speed, attack roll, different things that they can do. And there's the same thing for all of them across the board. So that's their combat stats. Esmeralda was also a part of this, and Van Richten was also another mechanic that I had written right here. There was a Van Richten roll at the top of the round at a layer action. I do this sometimes. I got this from Brendan Lee Mulligan. It was a super cool thing he had in one of his things in Unsleeping City Season 2, I think it was. But basically, they rolled a layer action roll. It was a flat roll. In this case, I call it a fate roll. It's to see how fate will treat you, right? And one of the players rolled it. The round 1, the DC was 20. On a nat 20 with a flat roll, nothing added to it, so they had to roll a natural 20. Didn't happen. And then each round the DC drops by 1 to see if this thing happens. It's honestly a very perfect, like, what if this happened situation, and that what if was Van Richten showing up. If Van Richten showed up, he would have rolled up and cast Guiding Bolt, does all these crazy cool things. It would have been a super epic thing for him to come in there. That'd be super awesome. But that didn't happen, so I never had to tap into Van Richten's stat block. But then Esmeralda's stat block and all that kind of stuff, and all the cool little tweaks and changes and curses and other stuff she can do. She was in there. She was being a badass. But basically, how the chase worked out was there's a whole bunch of werewolves chasing after them. You roll initiative and all that kind of stuff. And then round 1, the rogue got really far away from everybody. And then he was like, oh, well maybe, so he could have, so there's some interesting tactics as far as all right, I can get away, but then my party can't get away. So then how do I help my party get away? So there's a lot of really interesting stuff that was going on there, and it really got close as the wolves kept getting closer, because the wolves could move faster than the horses. So they were basically trying to whittle the wolves down before combat broke out. Another interesting move is when the rogue left away, I had Esmeralda jump on the horse of the rogue. That was the Felix the rogue. Esmeralda jumped on his horse, and he's like, move. So he took the move. He spent one action point of the 3 action point, or of the 3 chase points you have. He spent 1 to move, 1 to take the dash action, and then a bonus action to take the dash action again, right? Because he's a rogue. So only because he's a rogue he can do that. So then that means, yes, his horse is faster than the others. And we were talking and making some jokes about, why is Felix's horse faster? Because I think it's cool to let players use their abilities out in like bigger, broader ways. So he's able to get low on his horse and go. You know what I'm saying? So Felix was really fast, and I was like, this is not, Esmeralda would be super lame if she just stayed on the horse and ran away. No, she does a backflip off the horse, turns invisible. Whoo, super sick. And then all the rest of the players are going, and then they're in this, the first round was like a little bit of a stalemate of like them moving and trying to stuff, but they're at far range. And then the wolves' turn, they start off on the grid. I just put them on a battle mat, and there was 6 wolves, or there's all the wolves in a line, like a little war zone. And I had a regular battle mat, like anyone's battle mat. I had it out there, and the wolves were on the very far edge of the map. And there were 6 spaces and then a line of the players. And I was like, okay, what are y'all doing? And so they were doing their thing. And the wolves went 1, 2, 3. They moved forward 3 spaces. And the players in general can move only forward 2 spaces if they take the dash action, which only has a limited amount of times before it starts to make Constitution saves for exhaustion. So basically, the wolves are always going to be able to move 3, and the players move 2. Move 3, move 2, move 3. It just gets closer and closer, and that's purposely how kind of the math of it works out, right? So the wolves were encroaching in on them, and I wanted to throw a little curveball in there, especially with the rogue darting off. So I had Esmeralda get off there and go invisible, and then they start casting some ranged spells. The cleric starts casting fireballs and stuff, and it's all really cool theater of the mind. And the board that I have with all the spaces on it is purely representative of just vertical space, not horizontal space of how far apart they. It's just like how far away are they from each other in this line. It's called the chase line. How far away are they each other, right? So the cleric's casting fireballs and stuff and doing all this stuff. She's a fire sorcerer or a fire cleric basically, and lots of really cool stuff coming out as far as that goes. But Esmeralda was the big curveball jumping off the side. She's attacking wolves, which caused some of the wolves to go around her, caused the rest of the wolves to chase after the group. So it's just caused some space. So that's me purposefully as a dungeon master making a change to spice things up. Things were going to get very straight and linear, so I'm like, all right, Esmeralda, flipping off the back, right? Done. And she starts doing stuff and casting spells and showing how much of a badass she is and all that kind of stuff, right? And then you still roll for damage, you still make attack rolls, you still all do all this kind of stuff, and it was really cool to see them start to pick each other off. And then one of the coolest moments that started to really shift things around was the paladin got really low on health, because in the previous session they set off a bunch of traps. They set off 3 traps, so they're all actually kind of low on health a little bit. So it's kind of scary for these wolves to be chasing after him. And the paladin had like 20, I think the paladin had 24 hit points. I dealt 26 points of damage, but they have heavy armor master and they reduced the 26 down by 3 points to be a 23, and they had 1 hit point. The paladin had 1 hit point. They had to make a saving throw against lycanthropy, but they succeeded, and they did not contract lycanthropy, which is a huge goal of mine, to inflict that onto a player. I've been trying so hard for years. But anyway, and when that happened, the bard cast some enemies abound and suggestion on some of the wolves, and then the paladin cast command. So they start, all of the werewolves that are the closest to them, they start casting command to run and enemies abound to attack, and suggestion to so they were basically causing them to fight each other. It was really cool. Everyone was bringing. The rogue was like picking off people with his sneak attacks just as they're running forward. So again, the rogue can move, and then throw. So he was just running away and throwing. Did this super cool maneuver where he flipped around with a horse and tried to hide behind his horse as he like holds onto the side and like made it look like the horse was running by itself when Esmeralda jumped off. Super clever little hide sneak move there. So it was really cool, a really cinematic chase scene of this way. And they're just whittling the wolves down. They get to the point where the leader wolf snaps out of his mental enemies abound situation, looks around, sees there's only 2 wolves left, and he had a lot of distance because they're running, and then he fleed this way, and through some mind control stuff there's a big gap. So then it was actually interesting with the chase mechanics. If you're further than 7 spaces away, you can spend 1 chase point to try and escape, and he did that and succeeded, and then he escaped them. So an interesting swing of events. I don't know if they would have wanted to, go and go get him, but he escaped them, and they would have had to shift into exploration mode, and the chase scene would have ended, and then now they have to go find him again through other means outside of the chase mechanics, because as soon as one of the parties escape from the other one, it's done, right? So really cool to see them play around and mess with that. And then we get into some role play stuff where Esmeralda's there now and she's talking with them. She leads them to a section and they're talking about Esmeralda, why are you trying to find Van Richten? And she lays out all this stuff, and I planted some seeds about how the lore works from her side of things, just dropping scenes about the things that she knows and how Van Richten is setting the stage for Van Richten's reveal of who he is and stuff. And then they had some clues and pieces. I revealed some of the clues and pieces, but also, time out as a dungeon master, I want the reveal of a secret identity of a character to be really cool. If you didn't know, spoiler alert, Van Richten and Rictavio are the same person, right? So what I did in my version, I had Rictavio in the village of Vallaki. Rictavio is this very bombastic, very he's just this former circus performer that also happens to have a monkey and a saber-toothed tiger. Lots of really cool things. But then I also had Rictavio had a secret identity. His secret identity was Ricto. Rick. His name's Rick. Call me Ricto. That's why it's Rictavio. My true identity is Rick, right? And he has a false identity, basically. So he revealed himself, Rictavio revealed himself to the party to be Rick, right? And that was on purpose to try and not let them think that he actually has a secret identity, right? And so they're like, oh, this guy's Rick. Okay, he's actually he's a spy in Vallaki, trying to figure out what's going on in Vallaki. Oh, and she has a whole and none of that was true. He is Van Richten, trying to, So anyway, it worked out really well. Felix the Rogue, he was on to Van Richten, and at one point said to Rictavio, "Are you Van Richten?" And I rolled a secret insight check, which is when I roll a d20 behind the scenes. They tell me their insight modifier so that they don't know how high or low they rolled. And then it just seems like he checks out, because they could have rolled really high and it seems fine, or they could have rolled really low and they don't know. So it's up to their intuition. It's up to their how do they want to interpret this based on the given information, right? So it's not some meta dice knowledge, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, the rogue was on to him, but I got off the tracks, and then now there was revealed through some things like, oh my God, Van Richten's Rictavio. And as soon as they said that, I had Van Richten be there, and I had this all set up as a dungeon master. In this pocket of the story, Van Richten's there. Van Richten told them, as Rictavio, to go to this tower. They went to this tower. They exploded stuff. Lightning went off. It was very obvious they were there. The wolves were chasing them. In my dungeon master mind, I know Van Richten is around. I had a whole dice encounter mechanic system where Van Richten could show up, right? Now, they never rolled. They rolled an 18 once, but the DC was 19 at that point, and they never really got to have Van Richten show up. So he stayed in the shadows. And I had in my mind, I had a note for it that if they figure out Van Richten is Rictavio, etc., he was going to show up right then, right? So as soon as he shows up, he fires a crossbow bolt at Esmeralda, and she only had like 15 health left from all the big werewolf fight, and she goes unconscious, right? And they instantly stop, and they stabilize, and they stop, like, Van Richten, what are you doing? And this gave him a window to talk without Esmeralda there, and he shared his side of the story of what's going on, right? And then they stabilized her, they brought her back, and then they went away from each other. And I had one part of the group talk to Esmeralda, and the other part of the group talk to Van Richten, and then they share their story of what happened, the truth and horrors of all of that. I have homebrewed it slightly to have a whole side different tangent thing here. I'll show you here in my Dungeon Master binder. In this, they also leveled up to 6, by the way. Level up to 6. Woohoo! And then Rictavio. And then I have Esmeralda. So in Rictavio, I have a whole thing for it. He's secretly truly a vampire hunter. And in his secret knowledge, he has his backstory. And in his backstory, he has his son who was kidnapped in Count Mestus. I had a whole situation that's all here in my Dungeon Master binder for what his whole thing was. Basically, the long story short of it is my version of this, combined with inspiration from all different sorts and then just general storytelling type stuff, is Van Richten was a vampire hunter. Esmeralda was a Vistani, and her parents, as Vistani, from the vampire lore that they served, her parents were tasked to kidnap oh my god, Rictavio kidnapped Van Richten's son. They kidnapped his son and gave him to the Vampire Lord. And in the Vampire Lord's attempt to manipulate and stop Van Richten, he turned his own son. He turned Van Richten's son into a vampire. And Van Richten had to kill his own son to save him from not being a vampire. And then that was the part of the thing that sent him down and away. And then as soon as he found out that Esmeralda was a Vistani, he was just too pissed and too hurt and couldn't be around her anymore. He left and ran away from her. She's tracked him down this whole time, and she's finally now found him. So he has a definite, huge grudge against the Vistani, and some spite there lingering towards Esmeralda as well. But that relationship can be mended in some way, we shall see. And that was kind of revealed, and I was able to tell both sides of the story, going back and forth from each group to be able to kind of talk about how that whole thing went down. And that was a good, nice little lore bomb to drop on him to kind of let them know about these really interesting characters that will come back into the story. Because I have a plot story for Van Richten. Van Richten is trying to collect the material components to cast the Hallow spell, the hallowed ground, hallow, whatever, the Hallow spell, which sanctifies a section of ground, right? He wants to be able to cast that, to be able to have a sanctuary in his little section, to be able to be safe and all that kind of stuff. And he's going around to collect the material components. That's what he's up to. And that's also his reason why he's not going to join the party. He also has a magical reason not to join the party, because he's cursed by the Vistani to have anyone around him dies. He has very good luck because he takes the luck from everyone else around him, and they have very bad luck, and just bad things happen to you if you're in the company of Rictavio. Now, there is a situation and a solution where Rictavio's curse can be lifted, but that's something yet to be found out. And only Madame Ava knows that secret, but then she's captive based on the previous actions of the players. So anyway, that is some interesting little nuggets there to kind of give them. Also give Van Richten a reason to leave. So if I don't want him to linger around, like, I have to go now. Like, why? What do you mean? He has to go get these material components. And now, can we do it? That y'all have plenty of stuff to take care of. Let me do this. I know what I'm doing. And you can't come with me because you'd be in danger, right? So that solves the problem. Esmeralda wants to go with them, but they're former adventuring partners. That's also something that's in my lore of it, is Esmeralda and Van Richten used to be a part of an adventuring party together. And I think that's also out there in some other bits of lore as well. But they set back out off together, and that also now clears them away from the group to where I don't have a bunch of DMPCs sitting in the group, especially two powerful DMPCs. So now they're just left with Irina and themselves. So 4 players in Irina, and we're good. And they left. They set off onto the next part of the campaign, or next part of they went off to Kresk. They're off all the way on the far left side of the map. They're going to Kresk. And in my version of Kresk has a little bit of a magic shop. Kresk has some stuff going on. Kresk fills in some gaps that I feel like are present in the Curse of Strahd. They have there's no magic shops in Vallaki because the Burgomaster basically steals all the magic items and keeps them to himself. So Kresk has a limited magic item shop and a little bit of magic going on there. It's a little bit less regulated and stuff like that. So they are headed off there. I am now going to have to prep that. So I ended the session as they approached Kresk because I don't have Kresk ready. Kresk I do not have ready. They approached Kresk, and that's when I faded to black. I do not have Kresk ready, so it's perfect timing because now I have to go. I have Gary Con or Gen Con I'm going to be going to. I'm going to have to get some prep time in. We're going to Michigan to see my wife's family, so I have some time to prep the city of Kresk, or the village of Kresk, and make sure that's all nice and good to go. But on the way there, how I've worked things now, and I'm eventually going to codify this into a full-blown system you can take and use for yourself, is if a players are at point A and they have multiple different options of places to go, once they choose that direction, there is a preset encounter table for that stretch, for that section of the journey, based on what things are happening in the world, based on what things are going on, good or bad, based on clocks that are ticking around, like how close are they to this happening, right? And then I roll in that encounter table, and usually there's something, right? And if I shouldn't roll and I need something to happen because this is part of this I choose for something to happen, right? But I rolled this time, and it was kind of a good or bad roll, like a 50-50, and I rolled on the good side, and hey, they met. And let me actually show you live on the Dungeon Master screen. Where this goes is I know where this person is, so I go to the campaign binder, and I know all of the different places that they've gone to. This is the Werewolf Den. The werewolf den is fully and completed, and they saw Zweleka. How I have the whole thing. This is the entire. It's a little sneak peek of the my Dungeon Master binder. I have all of the stuff you need to know generally, and then each individual place. So if you look at the map, in the big picture of the map, there's all the different numbers like Z6, Z5, Z2, Z1, all that stuff. So then in Z1, there we go. There's the whole thing, flavor text, what's going on, all that kind of stuff. But I have a whole section here for the NPCs of the Werewolf Den, which is where Zweleka is, which is the mate of Emil, who's one of the werewolves that they've found and freed from Strahd's dungeon. So there she is, and there's her whole shtick. And they saw her, found her, and were able to talk with her, and she's now on her way back to Vallaki to save Emil and try and reunite the pack and all that kind of stuff. And just like I did last time, I'm going to roll a d20 live here in this video, and this d20 represents how good it goes for Zweleka and Emil, the good werewolves of the pact. Kirill is the leader of the bad werewolves. Emil is the leader of the good werewolves. And there's like a butting of heads, right? Emil is separate and gone. Zweleka is separate and gone. And all of the werewolves are together, but there's some good werewolves that are being forced, and they're kind of just like going along with it until they have a moment to rise up and overtake the bad werewolves. This is going to be a fate roll live on stream. Video, I guess. 1 through 5, 6 through 9, 10 through 14, and 15 through 19, and then obviously natural 20, natural ones are crazy. So here we go. How good? The high is good. High is good for the players. 10. So that's going to be a neutral stalemate right now. That plot is not going to accelerate. So what I do in that case, in my Dungeon Master binder, I'm going to go under my Dungeon Master binder. I'm going to go to my next session. Actually, no, in this case, yeah, I'm going to put it on my next session because here's where I organize stuff. So I'm going to put here, I'm going to put werewolf clock, neutral, right? And then that's going to be a little stalemate right there. Next session comes back around. I'm going to roll another one. This one does not count. I'm going to roll another one. That's an 18, right? So then now this plot of this story of this clock can continue to go as good or bad or neutral as it is. She's going to travel there. She might have a little bit of setback, and then I can keep things kind of flow and go until some higher or lower rolls kick in. And then if the high rolls kick in, some good things are going to happen in the pack. She gets reunited. They're in position. And maybe if I keep rolling good for that clock of things going on behind the scenes, if they don't take care of it, the good werewolves could overtake the bad werewolves. And oh my gosh, that's great, right? Now, in that case, I would not want Kirill to be killed off screen, especially because Kirill showed up 2 different times for the group. Kirill might show up and try and assassinate the players at some time and be like a super sneaky werewolf assassin, if that happened. But then if things go bad on these dice rolls, then Kirill and Emil now are captive, and they are now captured by Kirill. I don't know what's going to happen. Ask this guy what's going to happen. So right now it's neutral, and we will re-roll that at the next session, and we'll see what goes on with this whole werewolf side plot. But that's an example of clocks. These clocks that are always ticking in different parts of the world. They have left this werewolf clock, and they're off to Kresk, but they've left that alone. And oh my god, I can't forget. I almost forgot this. Lars the Bard has a pact with Strahd. Right, a warlock pact, literal warlock pact with Strahd. He has a pact with Strahd, and he figured out, because Van Richten is Van Richten, he figured out how to break the pact. In order for Lars to break the pact, I think this is freaking super sick and cool. In order for Lars to break his pact, he has to undo the circumstances in which set his pact in motion. And that's my homebrew lore right there. So Lars took upon Strahd's pact when they were fighting the hags, and they were about to die to the hags. They could not beat the hags in combat, so he had to have Strahd come and kill them. And Strahd said, "It's fine, I'll do it myself." He accepted the pact and killed a hag. Now, for Lars to undo his warlock pact with Strahd, he has to go kill the only other remaining hag. There were 3 hags. They killed Morgantha when they were in the city through some really crazy circumstances. Got her down. There's 2 hags left, and they're starting to get hags can replenish themselves, but that's a whole other story. There's basically 2 hags left. They couldn't take them by themselves because they fought them really early on in levels, and they had to call in Strahd to do the job for them, which is where the pact came from. And Strahd killed another one, but he kept this one. He kept this one alive because he wants the hags to come back. He wants to have a little coven of hags in his pocket, right? So there's 1 hag left. It's the weakest of all 3 hags. There's 1 hag remaining. And that hag is in the village of Barovia. The players don't know this. She is back to the village of Barovia, laying low, kind of just being in Barovia, doing some things, making some pies, etc., and just kind of like going through the motions. And she's been reset back to the village of Barovia, away from the players. The players are on their way this way. So Strahd has taken that hag, put her there. So now Lars knows in order to break the pact, he and he alone, that's part of the pact, he cannot get help from anyone, not his party, not anything. Lars has to break his own pact, and he has to kill a hag by himself. He has to solo a hag. The group's now strategizing of how can they set Lars up for success. How can they buff him up and give him weapons and enchant things and do things and set him up really for success to be able to fight a hag. And he can't get healed. They can't deal damage to the hag. He has to truly one-on-one this hag, and if he can do that, the pact is broken. And I think it's super sick, and I can't wait to see Lars 1v1 a hag and see how that goes. Because at this point in time, at level 6, it would be a legit fight. It would be a legit fight. I think it'd be pretty sick. Now, if they really help him out in some smart ways, I think he really stands a chance of doing it right now. If not, he might have to wait till level 7, level 8, let them get some more items, go to Crest, do some other things. Who knows? But that's where they're at right now, and we'll see where it goes from here. So, I hope you like these videos. I hope these are helpful, insightful. I know myself, I love to hear Dungeon Master's thoughts on how they kind of handle things, and that's kind of one of the many things I did is to become a better Dungeon Master, is to watch and learn from others, to be able to polish off my own stuff, take what you like, leave what you don't, all that kind of stuff. Hope it helps you. Stay creative. Think outside the box. Peace.